This press conference is also being streamed live on Glenmark's social media channels. Glenmark, as you know, has been intricately involved in the search for a promising health solution to address India's COVID-19 crisis. And early on in our investigation, we noted the multiple therapy benefits of the antiviral Favipiravir against this disease. In April 2020, Glenmark filed the product for clinical trials with India's drug regulator and received approval for conducting phase 3 clinical trials on mild to moderate patients. In May, Glenmark became the first pharmaceutical company in India to receive approval by the regulator to begin trials on COVID-19 patients in India. Today, we have gathered virtually here to share with you a positive update on our clinical trial findings, which we believe has the potential to strengthen India's fight against COVID-19. To share this important update, today we have with us Mr. Sujesh Vasudevan, President, India Formulations, Middle East and Africa, Mr. Alok Malik, Senior President and Business Head, India Formulations, and Dr. Monica Tandon, Vice President and Head, Clinical Development, Global Specialty Branded Portfolio. I now request Mr. Sujesh Vasudevan to share the insights on the clinical trial findings of Favipiravir with our audience. Over to you, Sujesh.
Yeah. So thank you, Madhurima, and let me just put up my presentation. Okay. I hope this is visible to everybody. Okay. So good afternoon, everybody who's joined us in this call, and welcome to this important meeting where we are going to discuss the unlocking of the treatment modalities for mild to moderate COVID-19 in India. Thank you very much for having made the time to be a part of this important development that we would like to share with all of you in our fight against COVID-19. And at Glenmark, we are really proud to be a part of this fight back. So I have a short presentation to make to everybody, and just to give you an insight into Glenmark Pharmaceuticals. As you are aware that we are a leading integrated research-led global pharmaceutical company with consolidated revenues of rupees 9,800 crores. We are among the top 80 pharma companies globally. And what's important is that we are integrated across the pharmaceutical value chain with a very strong presence in drug discovery, API, and finished dose formulations. We have been investing significantly in the research and development pipeline, and today we have both novel small molecules and biologics in our pipeline. We have 15 facilities across formulations and API in 4 continents, and we have global operations in more than 80 countries with over 14,000 employees. Just a small insight into the India business. India business is among the leading contributors for Glenmark and has been among the fastest growing companies over the last 5 years. In terms of revenues, as far as IQVIA is concerned, we logged in a sale of about 2,800 crores. We are the 14th ranked company in terms of value, and we enjoy leadership positions in dermatology, respiratory, and antihypertensive therapies. Just a bit of update on COVID-19, the situation as it exists today, and we are all familiar with this. It's truly a situation that is unprecedented, and you can see the numbers themselves are quite staggering. These are some global numbers that we're talking about. As far as India is concerned, again, the numbers are quite staggering and they keep growing. However, the good point is, of course, that our recovery numbers have now improved quite significantly, and that's something which is good as far as the development is concerned. We also see a daily increase in cases, and if you see the latest numbers, we have touched about 14,000 odd cases, which is among the highest that we have recorded so far. Of course, the need of the hour really is to see how we can tackle this disease and we can do it effectively. And the focus has been to help the healthcare professionals fight back and also help in faster recovery of patients and to save lives. Looking at these objectives, Glenmark started its fight back against COVID-19 and is at the forefront of leading this fight. In our endeavor to do that, we have initiated evaluation of treatment options for COVID-19, and we identified Favipiravir as a potential candidate. Now, why did we choose Favipiravir, or why did we choose to initiate work on Favipiravir? There are some points that I would like to highlight of the choice of Favipiravir. The first was it has proven in vitro activity against the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is the virus responsible for COVID-19. The second is that it has a wide therapeutic safety margin for COVID-19 at the dose that we administer. It had also shown promising results in a couple of studies which were done in March in China, and that gave us the insight that this drug could be effective against COVID-19. More importantly, it's an oral product, and that's, you can imagine, it's a huge benefit, especially when the hospital infrastructure is under strain. So if you have a product which can be administered orally to patients, they need not be admitted to hospitals only for the sake of administration of the drug. And this gives the doctors a good flexibility of managing patients outside the hospital setting. And it was already approved for novel or re-emerging pandemic influenza virus infections in Japan. So there was always this knowledge of the molecule, and the fact that it was used and it was documented even earlier gave us a lot of confidence about that this could be a potential candidate. Just to give you a global status update of where Favipiravir is on the global scale, COVID-19 therapeutic management guidelines include Favipiravir in Russia, Japan, and Saudi Arabia. There are approximately about 18 global clinical trials in more than 3,000 subjects that are undergoing today. And these are including in countries like India, USA, Canada, Italy, China, France, UK, and many other countries. Compassionate use has been allowed in Japan, and we have data of more than 2,000 patients who were administered Favipiravir for clinical use, and high recovery rates were observed at both 7 and 14 days of therapy in mild to moderate patients. The drug is approved by Italy and China for experimental use and compassionate use in COVID-19. There is a recent study which has been initiated in Canada on 760 patients. Going further with the global status update, the drug is under regulatory licensing process in Turkey and is expected to be made available to patients soon. It has been commercially launched by many companies in Bangladesh. Commercialization approval has been granted in the UAE, and protocol has been approved in Jordan. It is under registration approval process by more than 15 companies for launch in Egypt. Indonesia and Thailand both have approved clinical protocol, and companies are developing this for a local launch. It has been adopted in the COVID-19 treatment protocol in multiple CIS countries like Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Moldova. And it is undergoing evaluation in other Middle Eastern countries like Iraq and Bahrain based on the Saudi Arabia's treatment guidelines. The development of Favipiravir is indeed a landmark achievement, and particularly it lays emphasis on the Make in India theme itself. By working on Favipiravir, Glenmark has demonstrated end-to-end development capabilities. This is right from the API till bringing it to market. The entire process has been managed by Glenmark in India. So we have synthesized the active pharmaceutical ingredient in our plants at Gujarat. We have developed the formulation in our labs in Maharashtra. And we have conducted clinical trials in multiple states in the country. And it's truly an example of what we can do with our capabilities. Given that background, let us look at the approval journey of Favipiravir in India. And to do that, I would like to now invite Dr. Monica Tandon to take us through that part of the presentation. Over to you, Dr. Monica.
Thank you, Sujesh. Thank you for the great insight and introduction. Moving on, the approval journey. Next slide. So I'd like to touch upon initially Glenmark's Favipiravir clinical trial. It's very important to note that Favipiravir has been administered to Indian subjects already, and they have shown efficacy, evidence of efficacy and safety. So this is details of the trial. It's a randomized, multicentric, very scientific study in Indian patients evaluating efficacy and safety of Favipiravir versus standard of care. So we have about 150 subjects, and in accordance with the DCGI approved protocols, 90 subjects are mild COVID and 60 subjects belong to moderate COVID category. And the dosing regimen is the standard recommended dosing regimen of 1800 milligrams BID and 800 milligrams BID. That is initially the loading dose on day 1, followed by 1600 milligrams up to a maximum of day 14, which is the maximal treatment duration. So patient population that has been enrolled is based on confirmed RT-PCR positivity tests, and we've conducted this across 11 sites in India. Moving to the next slide. So it is important for us to note that there is promising global evidence of safety and efficacy. So there is a Russian study of 390 subjects, which was a phase 3 trial, on the basis of which they have received approval. So Russia was the first country that accorded full approval to Favipiravir for the treatment of COVID-19. And they had promising signals of efficacy, including viral clearance. Median elimination time was 4 days versus 9 days of standard of care. And RT-PCR negativity for most patients was achieved by day 10. And clinical signs and symptoms, which are very important from the patient perspective, fever resolution happened as early as day 3. So it was most marked. And overall reported efficacy was more than 80%. Similarly, we have a large compassionate use study from Japan where 2,041 patients were actually administered, this in all categories. In mild to moderate patients, by day 7, about 75% had improved. And by day 14, about 90% of patients had shown clinical improvement. So strong, promising signals of efficacy across many countries have been seen. Moving on to the next slide. So China was actually the epicenter of this pandemic, and therefore all research started in China. So the first published studies of Favipiravir and COVID-19 are the 2 Chinese trials which we have on this slide. And touching them very briefly, the first study demonstrated shorter viral clearance as early as 4 days. And actually, this was a study that sparked global interest, and researchers published the study for the medical fraternity to take advantage of these signals of efficacy. And in this study, there was radiological improvement, which was 91% by day 14. And the safety profile was remarkable. So similar signals were seen in the second Chinese study, which was a comparative study with another antiviral, where it showed shorter time to relief from clinical signs and symptoms. So good evidence from Russia, from Japan, from China, and all of these studies, they point to various factors. There's rapid reduction in viral load, faster fever resolution, radiological improvement, and most importantly, clinical recovery. So these are the key signals of improvement, very standardized endpoints, all demonstrating in the same direction, advantage of administering Favipiravir. Moving on. So based on all these evidences, Glenmark has received permission from the Indian regulator to manufacture and market Favipiravir for the treatment of mild to moderate disease. And this has been received under an accelerated approval process. And I think we'll dwell on this process. This accelerated approval takes into account the rarity of the situation, the severity of the disease, and the lack of treatment. And we must note that specific antiviral treatment for mild to moderate, and specifically an oral treatment, is actually not available. So Glenmark has received approval to manufacture under this accelerated approval that allows countries to urgently get the drug in an emergency situation, which is the current COVID pandemic. And here it's important to note that emergency does not refer to the clinical emergency status of the patient, but it refers to the emergency pandemic situation under which this drug has been accorded approval. So it is the pandemic situation that has led to this accelerated approval process and this emergency authorization. And it is under responsible medication. So restricted use will entail that every patient that is administered the drug will be informed in a manner that he understands. Before treatment initiation, will sign an informed consent form. So all these processes entail accelerated, and this is very important from the pandemic viewpoint. In order to get a drug during the time frame of the epidemic, is highly important that patients get benefit right now. Moving on to the next slide. So therefore, Favipiravir is an important step. It is an oral treatment, and it is a treatment that is much required in this category of patients, that is mild to moderate. So very briefly touching upon the mechanism of action, Favipiravir, it gets converted into the host cell into the triphosphate and inhibits the RNA polymerase enzyme and inhibits viral replication. So basically, it prevents small virions from being produced and therefore arrests the infection. Next slide. So starting early is the key. Antiviral drugs, they work best when they start early. So moving on to the next slide, which highlights the importance of this aspect. So we can see that both mild, moderate, as well as in late and severe, there is a viral replication phase. But initially, there is a high viral load in COVID-19. So this happens at the time of onset and a little before the time of onset. And that is the window of opportunity in which an antiviral drug works best. It reduces the antiviral load, reduces the viral response. And if this is controlled early, this will prevent patients from progressing into severe disease. It will prevent progression into conditions that lead to mortality. Because as we see on the latter half of the slide, we have the later phase, which is severe and critical, where it is the body's pathological immune response. So immune response is beneficial when it starts to prevent or to protect the host from fighting the virus, but in a subset of patients, it goes on into a pathological manifestation, and therefore, even before that phase starts, it's important to administer this antiviral therapy. Moving on to the next slide. So Favipiravir, like all other drugs, has contraindications. So it has contraindications like severe renal and hepatic impairment. It is contraindicated in pregnant and lactating women, and it is also contraindicated in patients who have an allergic hypersensitivity to Favipiravir. And there is a caution of patients who have gout or who have raised uric acid levels or disorders of metabolism. So very standard cautions, contraindications in some of these class of drugs, and that is the background of the monotherapy. And Glenmark is also embarking upon a combination therapy, and that is the next step forward. So there is a combination that is planned. This is specifically in moderate subjects, and the emphasis is on combining two antiviral drugs with differing mechanisms of action, because it's a stepwise approach. So if you see, there is a diagrammatic representation to show the benefit. So Favipiravir acts on the viral replication phase, and Umifinavir, which is the other drug, which is a very safe drug, which is actually an approved drug for influenza in some countries. So this drug, it prevents the interaction of the viral attachment to the host cell. So these are two drugs, differing mechanism of actions, both very safe drugs. So their actions will add on. There will be synergism, and we will see enhanced efficacy in a subset of patients which require, and that is the moderate patients. So this is a brief on the monotherapy as well as the combination therapy. Moving on, with that background, I hand over to Sujesh for taking the next steps.
Thank you, Dr. Monica. So just to take you through, what is next for us. So obviously, we will be commercializing this product, and we are very proud to introduce FabiFlu for the Indian population. FabiFlu is going to be the first oral antiviral treatment option for mild to moderate COVID-19 cases. As far as the commercial aspects are concerned, FabiFlu 1800 milligram twice daily, and day 2 it is 800 milligrams twice daily, day 2 onwards. The price and the pack details are mentioned over here. So the pack is available in a strip of 34 tablets, and the maximum retail price to the patient will be at 3,500 rupees for the pack of 34 tablets, which is approximately about 103 rupees per tablet. So we strongly believe that FabiFlu is a significant step in the fight against mild to moderate COVID-19 cases, and it gives a benefit of efficacy, safety, as well as comes with the added advantage of being in an oral format. So this is all that we had to share with you, in terms of the presentation. Thank you very much, and I would hand it back to Madhurima.
Thank you, Sujesh. We will now begin with our Q&A session, which is limited only to the media representatives logged in our call. I thank our viewers on the social media platforms for joining us for today's session. I now request the control panel team to stop live streaming of this press conference to our social media channels. We will now open the floor for Q&A. For today's Q&A session, I request our speakers, Mr. Sujesh Vasudevan, Mr. Alok Malik, and Dr. Monica Tandon to join us. Our participants can ask questions using the chat option or can also click on raise your hands to ask questions. Can we unmute the line of Vikas Dandekar?